guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have 21 books that I would like to read in 2021. 21 is quite a substantial number to get through in one video, so I'm going to try not to linger and dally on any for too long. I will also say there are more than 21 books here because some of them are like stand-ins for series. I have one here that's like a box set, and then I also have a few that I've bundled together as kind of like a theme or representing like one thing. Some of the books you're going to be seeing in this video are going to be quite obvious and quite expected from me, but I do also have a substantial amount that I think you guys will be a little bit more surprised about, and I'm excited to see what you guys think about me wanting to read those immediately, because the way that I made this list is that I grabbed all of the obvious ones and then I kind of went through my shelves and thought, if I could pick up something right now, like what am I in the mood for? What do I really want to dive into, and something that I feel like I'm going to want to get through in 2021. So just cracking on with this video, I feel like we should get the more obvious stuff out of the way first, and the most obvious of those is the Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, and also in the same vein we have the Rhythm of War. So essentially in 2021 I would like to get fully up to date on the Cosmere. I have read I think 6 books so far, and I have 5 to go plus novellas. So I have 2 first era Mistborn books, then the 2, I think there's 2 or 3 published Mistborn second era books, and Rhythm of War, which is currently the most recent Stormlight Archive book. So the Well of Ascension is the second book in the Mistborn trilogy, and this one follows a guy called Kelsier who is trying to overthrow the Dark Lord and the Final Empire. To do this, he has assembled a group of talented allomancers who are people that can ingest metals and harness their abilities. Kelsier himself is a Mistborn, and he stumbles across another Mistborn called Vin, and a Mistborn is somebody who can use all of the abilities from all of the metals as opposed to just one. The Final Empire was my second favourite book of 2020, and I'm kicking myself that I have not yet continued with this series, but a big goal and a big priority for me in 2021 is going to be getting up to date on everything, because I've been loving the Cosmere. Rhythm of War is the 4th installment in the Stormlight Archive, and the Stormlight Archive is going to be 10 books in total, and I believe it's going to be the series that really ties the Cosmere together as a whole. We have like crossovers and Easter eggs and things in Stormlight, and this one is the story. It's real long-winded getting into the story, so the actual plot of the series is not really the plot of like the first book or even really the second, but this series follows a group of legendary knights who have to rise up to tackle the oncoming apocalypse in this world that is ravaged by storms. There's a lot of politics in here. Like the first book mainly focuses on war politics, the second focuses a lot on general politics, the third one has a lot of magic, and I believe the fourth has a lot of like extended Cosmere stuff in it. So I am a co-host of the Stormlight read along, so I am definitely going to be reading this one sometime soon. Like, I know that I should really catch up on the Cosmere before I read this. Not sure how far I'm gonna get, but I would like to at least read this one before I tackle this one. Another real obvious one for me is Fool's Errand by Robin Hood. At this point when I'm filming this, I still haven't read Ship of Destiny, which is right here. It's on my January TBR. But in 2021, you can rest assured that my book club, Catch Up Book Club, is going to continue tackling the Realm of the Eldlings. I will be posting an announcement video with the schedule for the last 3 series in the Realm of the Eldlings very, very soon. But this one is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the 3rd series in the Realm of the Eldlings overall, and I don't know much about this because I know I'm going to read it anyway, and with me not being up to date and everything kind of connecting, even if not everything follows the same characters, I don't like to read ahead on these synopses. But this series once again follows the Fitz and the Fool, who are main characters from the first trilogy, the Farseer trilogy. Really excited to get back into this, especially with all of the things I've learned about the world from the live ship traders, and I'm excited to see where the Fitz and the Fool are in this trilogy. This is, I don't know if this trilogy is going to be an emotional experience, but I know by the time we get to the final trilogy, which is the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, I'm going to start getting real emotional because we followed these characters for a very long time. Another series I would very much like to continue is the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. This is a series that is steeped in Egyptian mythology, and we are following a woman called Nari, who is a con woman, and she does actually have some healing abilities, but she essentially diagnoses really rich people with deadly illnesses so that they will spend a lot of money on medicine that they don't need, and she then gets a cut of the profit. One day she accidentally summons a powerful djinn called Dara, and he notices something strange about her, so together they must journey to the city of Brass to find out more about Nari's heritage. I gave the first book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but I do think that the issues that I had with the first book, the things I didn't quite love about it, won't be as present or as noticeable in the sequels, so I'm really excited to continue because I really like the writing and the world and the politics in this series. Another sequel is Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. This is the follow-up to Ready Player 1, the follow-up that we never expected and never knew we needed. Ready Player 1 was one of my favorite books of, I think, 2019, and it's set in this futuristic dystopian world where people are pretty miserable, so they plug into this virtual reality called the Oasis, and the creator of the Oasis, James Halliday, has left a trail of Easter eggs for the players to find, and whoever manages to find all of these Easter eggs will inherit the Oasis and everything that James Halliday ever owned. So our main character stumbles across the first Easter egg, and from there it is a wild and dangerous chase to see who can track down the rest and claim the Oasis. Really loved book 1. I don't know if book 2 is necessary, but I'm gonna find out in 2021 because I will be picking up the sequel. If nothing else, I'm excited to be back in this world. The last of the sequels is The Emperor of Evening Stars by Laura Thalassa. This is the novella in the Bargainer series, which is a new adult fantasy romance that follows a woman called Callie who is a siren, and she has a string of black beads up her arm that represent debts to the Bargainer. The Bargainer is a powerful fairy male who always comes to collect the repayment for his debts, and the first book is told in 2 timelines. So we have the timeline 7 years in the past where Callie is collecting these debts, and the present day timeline where the Bargainer has finally come to collect. Really love this series. I just generally want to finish it this year. So I have the novella, which I believe is from the Bargainer's perspective, and then I just have the final book in the trilogy to read. Really excited because I really love this series. So those are the obvious ones from me, the ones that I can give detailed synopses about, give you a little bit of information. Everything else in this video I am going to be a little bit more hazy on because I have yet to even start the series, if they are a series, so my knowledge is a lot more limited. But say a few fantasy romance books I would like to read. The first one is Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. This is the first book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood. I've heard excellent things about this. I am a little bit nervous about starting this series because I believe it is very long, but this is a vampire romance. I believe every book or every few books follows a different vampire who is a member of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. The first book follows Wrath. A lot of people I think don't like him, but I have also heard that people think that I will really like him, so that's exciting. People just lose their minds over this series, and I haven't read a book from it yet, so I'm excited to do that. Another series people seem to lose their minds over is the Wicked Villain series by Katie Robert. So these are all standalone books. The first one in the series is Desperate Measures, and every book in this series is a smutty Disney retelling where the princess falls in love with the villain, and I think that they are all in a contemporary setting. The first one, Desperate Measures, I believe is an Aladdin retelling with Jasmine and Jafar. Never been a huge fan of Jafar, just in general. I think he's a real sleaze, so I'm wondering how I'm going to feel about this one. A little bit worried just because I don't like Jafar, but everybody really loves this series, so I had to give it a try, and yeah, apparently it's real smutty as well. Another one that's kind of a standalone is A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Cover. This one is part of the Married to Magic series, I think, although it's the only book that's been published so far. All I really know about this one is that the main character is taken by the Elf King and made to be his queen, and it is like a standalone story with a happily ever after. The cover for this is absolutely stunning. It got a lot of buzz on its release, and as somebody who loves fairy romance stories, I had to pick it up, and I'm hoping to read this one very soon because I'm definitely intrigued, because all of the hype that it got was based on the synopsis and the cover, not the actual contents, so I'm interested to see whether I like this one. Something I want to put less emphasis on in 2021 is reading new books, especially new series or any series where it is not completely published and will not be completely published in 2021. So essentially I want to be reading more back backlist, things that are already all available so that I don't have to wait and like risk my interest waning and just not completing the series in the future. So there are quite a few backlist series that I would maybe like to work through this year. The first one of those is The Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence. This is an adult grimdark series that follows a girl called Nona who goes to a convent, and this convent is full of assassin nuns. I believe that there's like an assassin school trope in here, and it's a series about assassin nuns. A lot of people whose opinions and reviews I really trust really love this. Those people have been recommending it to me, you guys have been recommending it to me, and I own the entire trilogy already, so it's about time that I got to it. The next one is the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, the first book being Jade City. I believe that the final book is going to be published towards the end of this year, and this one is kind of like a warring gang story. I think it's an adult fantasy, but the magic in here surrounds jade. I believe it can be used to enhance a warrior's skills, and all of the jade in the city is controlled by these two warring families. I've heard amazing things about this. It is one that I have wanted to read for quite some time. I've owned this first book for at least a year now, and I feel like as the series is coming to a close this year, I think it's going to be 3 books anyway, please let me know, but as I assume that the series is coming to a close this year, I feel like 2021 would be a good time to start this one. The next few series I have are all young adult. There is actually quite a few backlist young adult series that I really want to read. The one I'm most desperate to get to is Fallen Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. Still don't know very much about this. It was very popular at the time when the books were actually being published, but I don't hear too much about it these days, and this is like a young adult Game of Thrones, to the point where I've been told if you've read Game of Thrones you will be able to tell like how obvious it is a young adult version of Game of Thrones, but it is a young adult high fantasy series that is multi-perspective, and I've heard some pretty good things about it. And you know, I don't think like a Game of Thrones light is something that I'm necessarily opposed to, because Game of Thrones is really heavy, it's really dense. I really love the series, but I do think I would also enjoy a version of it that has a lot of the same elements but is a little bit easier to get through. One that I don't know very much about at all that I really want to read is the Winner's Trilogy by Marie Rakowski. The first book is The Winner's Curse, and this is kind of a mix of young adult fantasy and like high society, like gossip, pretty dresses kind of book, which to be fair, not mad about it. And we're following a girl called Kestrel who buys a boy. I'm assuming that she speaks to him first and is intrigued by him, but she buys him at a slave market, and I'm assuming there's a romance between those two because this is like typical young adult fantasy. I don't know much about it, but I have been intrigued by this series for a long time, and I believe that Marie Rakowski's newest release, The Midnight Lie, is set in the same world, and while you don't have to read both, I do like to read things in order where possible. The last series is an entire box set, and that is The Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson. So the first book, I believe, is The Kiss of Deception. So this is a series that when I first started BookTube I was hearing a lot about, and I believe that a lot of people do really love this series. I don't know whether it would be classed as fantasy romance, but I do believe it has a strong romantic plot, as we are following a girl in here who runs away on her wedding day, and she is being hunted down by 2 people who want to bring her back. One of them is a prince, one of them is an assassin, but I believe that the reader does not know which one is which. So I'm really intrigued about this. I've pretty much heard nothing but amazing reviews for this series, and it's definitely something that I would like to get to. Also, just these editions, I really like a floppy paperback. Next up we have some random bits and pieces, the first one being Battle Royale by Kushan Takami. I have wanted to read this for such a long time. At first I was intimidated by it because it was translated. I've now read quite a few translated books, so that doesn't bother me anymore, but it is pretty hefty. It is 650-ish pages, which is quite a lot considering that this isn't my usual kind of story. Like, it's not adult high fantasy, which is the normal type of chunky book that I read, but this one is an adult. I'm not sure whether you class it as like a thriller, a horror, or a dystopian, but the movie that was based off this book is one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely adore it, and it is kind of like a Hunger Games before Hunger Games existed, where a class of high school or junior high school students are taken to a deserted island where they must fight to the death death and only the last one standing gets to leave. So yeah, the reason I want to read this is because I love the movie, but just generally I really like the premise of this, and I'm hoping I enjoy the book as much as I like the film. One that I'm really intrigued about is The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. This is, once again, I'm not actually too sure about the genre of this. It's a young adult thriller, I think, but also a contemporary, and it has a fantastical element, but it follows these two boys who are friends. They've been friends since childhood. They've since like kind of grown onto different paths. So one of them is really popular, the other one is a little bit of an outcast, and one of them starts to have like hallucinations and visions about a fantasy world or like a fantasy kingdom, and together they both kind of spiral into this fantastical reality. I feel like it's a book that's very hard to describe, and you can only really do it well if you've read it. And then I think it's still a little bit bizarre, but I've heard really good things about this from a variety of different people who read a variety of different things, and I am very intrigued. I'm also really interested in the mixed media aspect in here, and if you guys can see, I believe that the pages start to deteriorate as the characters spiral further into this alternate whatever it is. I would also like to read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Last year I read Gods of Jade and Shadow and I really enjoyed it, although I do think that this is a very different story, as this one is like a gothic horror. In here we are following a socialite who's received letters from her cousin saying that she thinks her husband is trying to kill her. So the socialite heads out to this remote manor house to find out what's going on, and there's a couple of like dominating presences in this house, two of those being the cousin's husband and also her father, but then we also have the house itself, which starts to infiltrate the main character's dreams. So this is a very different story to Gods of Jade and Shadow, but one of the things that you cannot deny about Gods of Jade and Shadow is that it is very well written. So even though elements of Gods of Jade and Shadow obviously aren't going to transfer to this, which is a different genre, I do definitely think that the writing style is going to transfer across, and it is one of the things that I loved the most. So I'm really excited to get to this one. I've heard some mixed things about it, but I really like gothic stories in general, so I think this is going to be a hit with me. One that I previously wasn't too interested in, but I am now, is This Is How We Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. This is a very short book. I think it's a sci-fi that follows two agents who are trying to secure the best future for their factions, but I also think it's a romance. I've heard really good things about this. I'm a little bit dubious because it is like less than 200 pages, and you all know I don't really like short things, but I have heard amazing things, and the fact that it's apparently heavily romantic has me even more interested. The next three are all separate books, but they're just kind of standing in as one thing, and that is that I would like to read at least one book by Colleen Hoover in 2021. Now the reality of the situation is that if I pick up one Colleen Hoover book, I'm likely to read through all of the ones I have, because she is a very addictive, very compelling author. So I will definitely be reading at least one, if not all of these this year, I would say, because Colleen Hoover is my go-to to get out of a reading slump, because I just pick up her books on a whim. I don't know a great deal about the plots of them, but the ones that I currently own are Regretting You, which I believe is a mother-daughter story where the mother has lost her husband, the daughter has lost her father, and they are trying to find a way to go on with their lives kind of like without the glue that holds them together. We then have Layla, which is a romantic thriller that follows a male protagonist, which isn't usual for Colleen Hoover, and the main character's like girlfriend slash wife, Layla, has been in hospital fighting for her life, and when she recovers physically, it's quite clear that she has not recovered mentally. So he takes her to the place where they fell in love, and some strange things start to happen. And the last one of Colleen Hoover's books that I currently own is Confess, which I believe is one of her standard new adult romances. This one follows a woman who falls in love with an artist, and the artist is keeping a big secret from her, which, to be fair, pretty standard plot. But yeah, I find Colleen Hoover so compelling. The plot twists are wild, and if I'm ever struggling to pick books up, I can always rely on Colleen Hoover to pull me out of a slump. And the last two don't really fit into any category. They're just like things that I really want to read. The first one is the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics reboot from Boom Studios. This is a modernized retelling of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I'd seen this around and didn't really realize what it was. I was wondering why Buffy comics were being promoted when they were so old. Then discovered it was a reboot. Didn't even realize that on the front cover Buffy is holding a mobile phone, and I love the art in here. I love the modernized concept of all of the characters, and I'm just really intrigued. Like, Buffy is a fandom that I am very, very sensitive about because it has such a special place in my heart. But when I discovered what these were, I couldn't help but like jump at the chance to be able to read them. This is not currently like all fully published. It's an ongoing series. I think they're up to volume 3 or 4, but I would like to make a start on this and then continue on as they continue to publish the volumes. And the other one is just a fantasy series that I've heard really, really great things about. I'm not sure if the 3rd book is being published this year, but I think it may be 4 books in total, and that is the Burning series by Evan Winters, the 1st book being Rage of Dragons. I don't really remember what this series is about, and the synopsis does not help me out because this edition does not have one, but from what I remember, this is an African inspired adult epic high fantasy series. One of the main characters is a soldier in an army, and in this world males and females have specific powers. I think 1 in every 100 men has like enhanced soldier abilities, like enhanced strength and things like that, and 1 in every so many women, it's like a much larger number, has the ability to call down dragons. I think I've heard excellent things about this. Some of my friends who've read this are raving about this and say it's amazing. The 2nd book was published in 2020. I'm hoping that it won't be too long a wait for the next 2 books. I think if there is a release date for this year for the 3rd book, because these books are a little bit chunky, although they're not too big. The first one is just under 600 pages, but because they are a little bit chunkier, I may start this series this year, providing that the last book is released next year so that I can read that one when it's released. But that is it. Those are the 21 book slash series I would like to read in 2021. I always find it really difficult to make these videos because even though I don't tend to mood read, my reading does evolve throughout the year. Like, I'll find a niche or a subgenre that I become really, really into and want to read more and more from that subgenre. So it can be a little hard at the beginning of the year to set a list of books that I think I want to read in the next 12 months when I'm going to be a different person in December than I am right now. But a lot of these are ones that I have wanted to read for a long time anyway, but you guys know me anyway. I'm terrible at actually reading what I want to, which is real bad, and I need to stop doing that. I need to prioritize the things I'm desperate to read. But please let me know down in the comments a few of the books that you guys would most like to get to this year. And aside from that, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, which is actually open now, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.